Attorney Gary Price is our expert in elder law and Medicaid in Indiana. Today, we take a closer look at his book, and it's the same name, Medicaid in Indiana. Good morning, Gary.
Good morning, Angie. Good to be here.
It's good to have you here. And we often reference the book and tackle the topics that are inside. But let me ask you a bit of the genesis of it. What caused you to write the book in the first place?
Well, a few years ago, I started noticing that, well, a couple things. I started noticing that clients on the initial interview would often ask the same questions. And so I started taking notes of what those questions were and responded to those. Of course, I responded to them in person, but also responded to them in the book. So a lot of the initial questions that people ask about Medicaid are answered in that book. And I also started paying attention to a lot of the misconceptions that people come in to the office with. And so I also made a point to address those misconceptions in the book. And another thing that people often did was they would say, after we had this initial meeting, they would say, do you have like an outline or something that can help remind me of what we talked about today? And so the book helps to do that as well. It really talks about a lot of the things that we often talk about in the initial consultation.
Well, you and I have talked about these different topics as we go through. How do you address the changes in Medicaid that seem to happen at breakneck speed?
Well, that's a tough one for the book because I can't, I don't rewrite the book every year. But what happens, most of the changes, Angie, have to do with dollar amounts, not with the way, I've often spoke about how Medicaid provides us with certain tools that allows us to make proper transfers in sheltering funds for the client and sheltering resources for the client. Medicaid hasn't changed that here lately, so luckily I haven't had to change the book in that regard. What Medicaid does every year is change dollar amounts, like what is the maximum amount the community spouse can keep, or the community spouse can have as far as income. What is the maximum dollar amount that we can utilize in determining? We've talked about penalty periods and that sort of thing. Those dollar amounts have changed, but not the tools that we use. If they ever change the tools, or when they do, I certainly change the book. But until that happens, I think I'm pretty good.
The second edition of Gary Price. Gary, let everybody know how they can get their hands on a free copy of this book.
That's right. It is a free copy. All they do is call my office. That number is 812-479-8721, and we'll send you a copy of the book. And again, no charge.
Well, I've been able to share that book with friends of mine as well, and it really is a helpful, clear, concise tool, Gary. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you.
We'll be back with more local lifestyles after this commercial message.